There she
Hello.
is.
Hello.
Do you
Hi
hear
there.
us?
So I'm so sorry. Technical difficulties in the basement.
Okay. Welcome, Tamar.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's great to be here.
Hi there,
Right.
Tamar.
Hello, Rabbi. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I've been wondering about you. Everyone says Rabbi Avi, Rabbi Avi.
You
I don't
haven't
know.
met Rabbi Avi? How
We've
is
been here
that
for a month. I don't know. We just came on different days.
Nice to meet you.
You're,
Pleasure.
yeah, I had
Pleasure.
no idea
On
that you
Sunday, I'll be there in person.
Okay.
So
I will
Tamar,
too.
so you've done a lot of things. I gave a little bit of your resume. I know you don't want to talk so much about you, which is, me as a somewhat sadistic person wants to talk about nothing but you. No, but you've done a lot of fascinating things. So I just want to maybe talk a little bit about maybe just, it's important to know what you're doing now to understand who the person is. Who is Tamar? So you grew up
Who
in New York.
is Tamar?
Talk a little bit about your family, religious, not religious, your parents, right? You had a parent who's, your mom was a filmmaker, both involved in film, your brother's involved in film. Maybe talk a little bit about your childhood.
Okay. Well, the important first thing on this show, I have to say, my mother was not Jewish. And so I was raised in they married in the 50s. They were a mixed marriage. And we were brought up with no religion of any kind. We had a Catholic nanny. That was my idea of spirituality. And then later, when I got married, I married a child of survivors, and it was very important to his parents that I actually convert. So all my Yiddishkeit happened to me late in life, like in sort of, 30s, 40s. I learned Hebrew. I learned to conduct services. I had a kind of a rebirth as a Jew, not having had it as a child. So that's the first important thing to say about me, I think, in this show and in this place. So what my parents, were, they weren't observant of any kind or really had much faith, but they were artists. They were filmmakers, and they were not starving artists, but they were kind of bourgeois bohemian before David Brooks invented the phrase. They were kind of middle-class, comfortable people, but they saw themselves as artists, and they made documentary films. And
Where'd you grow up?
in New York City. Mostly, little bit of travel, but mostly New York City. New York City is a really exciting place to grow up, and it makes you kind of if it doesn't crush you, it makes you kind of I think a dynamic person. So you don't want to hear about my childhood, my adolescence, but as my early career, I was a journalist, and I worked for the New York Times, and I worked for Newsweek, and I worked for the New York Review of Books, and I guess I still think in many ways, even though it's not what I do anymore, I still think kind of helping people understand what's going on in the world is a really important thing to do. And I was the deputy editor of the Times op-ed page at a very young age. And so I thought that facts were important, but so was opinion. And so was the exchange of opinion, and how the exchange of opinion shapes what's possible politically. And so that's kind of my background. And I don't know, I'll stop there. You can ask me questions if you need to know more.
No, I remember when I saw everything else, so much going on, and you don't have the normal time to pay such attention to things that you might. And I just remember, getting this somewhat like random person who wanted to come, and I was like, New York Times op-ed. I was like, all right, that'll be fun. Like, I'm sure we'll have a lot to discuss at the least. And it's been true. It's been a lot of fun. Maybe before, we're going to talk in a minute about Ukraine, and I know that's what's really interesting to talk about, but I'll talk a little bit about what your day job that you took some time off from, which is a nonprofit that you founded in Washington, which deals with employment issues, Opportunity America.
So first, let me tell the story of how. So I was a journalist for like 20 years, 25 years. Worked for newspapers, wrote books, was always on the outside, the way journalists are, kind of looking in. And journalists are a little bit ironic usually. Journalists don't like to take sides. Journalists, they're neutral. And I went to Arizona.
Sure they are.
Well, they pretend to be. Especially in my day, we used to pretend to be. It was important. We used to really, that was the faith, was we're neutral. Right. So I went to Arizona in the early 2000s, where there was a fight going on about immigration. And there was Democrats and Republicans and business and labor and faith were all opposed to this idea that a local sheriff was trying to pass, where unauthorized immigrants would not be able to get government benefits. And the polls showed them losing 80-20. Like the good guys were way at the wrong end of the debate. And I was supposed to be there to write a story and do interviews. And I said, we're canceling the interviews. We're going to have a meeting. We're going to build a coalition. We're going to fight back. We're going to raise money. We didn't win. And that bad sheriff went on to control Arizona politics for 20, have a say in Arizona politics for 20 years. Yeah, Joe. But for me, it was the crossing over of the fence from being the ironic journalist to thinking, oh, wait a minute, like you can make a difference if you actually get involved and bring people together and try to make something happen. And so after that, it's a long story. I went to Washington, I worked on immigration. I founded a small nonprofit there that tried to find the solution on immigration. I was kind of a go-between between the Senator Kennedy's office and Senator McCain's office. And then the immigration debate got very, for want of a better word, sour and stalemated. And it just became for both sides, both sides just use it now to get voters, and nobody's really trying to solve it anymore. Senators Kennedy and Senators McCain, they couldn't have been more different, but they were trying to solve it. And so at that point, I said, okay, I have to reinvent myself and reinvent my nonprofit. And we've decided to focus on the issue that, the way I describe it, is the economy is changing. Robots are coming. People have to be much more educated than they used to be in the past. In the 1980s, 2/3 of jobs, all you needed was high school. Now, 2/3 of jobs, you need some kind of training. And so we decided to focus on how can we help the education system adjust so it's going to be ready to help people in the new economy. And that's all kinds of people. It's people who, now are working class people or poor people, but eventually it's going to be all of us. We're all going to need to retrain.
So how do you help them?
Well, I don't actually help any real people, right? I work on policy, but so there's no real system set up for educating people that really gets them ready for the jobs that we have now. Employers are all complaining. There's no one ready to do the jobs. No one has the right skills.
So the problem is that that there are certain jobs, I guess, that have certain status, that people want jobs or they don't want other jobs. And those jobs that they don't want are the ones that the system is just not set up to train people correctly.
It's not even that. It's the system's not set up to train people correctly, but it's not about status. It's people who used to get by with no more than high school. Dad graduated from high school and worked in the Ford plant. You can't graduate from high school and make a decent living anymore. You need to train to work in the advanced manufacturing factory. And it's actually a very good job, and you can make a lot of money, and it takes skill and problem solving, but we don't have good training for it. And I mean,
Should we be going back to trade schools?
Well, because you don't want to have two tracks, right? And every job needs problem solving now. Like in the Ford plant, you didn't really need to, in the old days, you didn't need to know how to problem solve. You just turned the thing when it came by. Now, every single job on the planet, you also have to be able to be a critical thinker and communicate with people. The jobs are changing, and many more people need both some kind of maybe IT skills and problem solving and communication skills. So we're not going to say, oh, you're going to be a technical guy and you'll never make it into the white collar. It's more that both the white collar guy needs some more technical skills, probably, because his job's probably got some technical IT stuff in it. And what used to be the blue collar guy needs some problem solving, critical thinking, and more skilled. Like, you can't work in a factory unless you really know how to work a computer now. So trying to convince the education system to find the best things that are going on in the education system and encourage them, and then encourage policy to change so that there's room for this experimentation.
So are you doing research and publishing papers, policy?
Yeah, well, we do that. And then I help actual college systems. I help states figure out how to reorganize their community college system. And then I work on Congress. Like you can use your Pell. So Pell Grant is like a scholarship money, right? Like it's like a voucher. I can get a Pell Grant to get an associate degree in sociology, which has zero value in the labor market. I cannot use my Pell Grant to study a short program that will train me in IT, something that I can earn $100,000 a year. So like the setup is all set up as if everyone is going to go to four-year college and wear a white collar and work in an office. That's good if people can get four-year degrees, but not everybody will. So what are some of the other answers?
Do you need to lobby Congress to change the legislation about grants from the top?
Yeah, well, that's one of the pieces. You have to do that. And then you have to work with the colleges you have to find the colleges that are doing really interesting things and kind of give them encouragement and lift them up, like show that model to everyone else. And you have to do national research that shows like, hey, it's paying off for them. And I mean, there's a variety of tools that you use. But I mean, let's just bring the whole problem back to Poland for a second. Here are all these refugees who, I'm hearing increasingly, we want jobs, but they don't actually have the skills that anybody needs in Poland right now, right? I mean, there's only so many cleaning ladies and there's only so many people who can work in restaurants. These people, but Poland, like everywhere else, the birth rate is low and the companies here need trained people. Well, there should be job training to teach some of these women to do IT stuff.
Right.
It's the answer, and it's the answer to like poverty and opportunity and people's needs is give them skill.
No question. Tamar, you somehow got yourself here to Krakow and into our universe. And have spent, talk about the last month. You've been here a month?
I've been a month, almost, yeah.
You've been here a month. Maybe talk about, really, I guess you've been in Krakow. I mean, you traveled a little bit outside in Poland, but Krakow and the border area, and then inside Lviv. So let's first talk about what you've been doing in Krakow.
So you were kind enough, the JCC was kind enough to encourage me to come. And you said to me on a phone call I was in Washington, you said, come, maybe you'll sort boxes, maybe we'll find something better for you to do, but, go ahead, come, we'll find something, we'll find some way to work together. And so I came, and on that basis, I got on a plane, literally like that, the next day I got on a plane. And then I got here and I had a meeting with some people on your team. And I asked them, I said, well, what do you know about the refugees that you're serving? Do you know their stories? Do you talk to them about their needs? And your team said, well, we talked to them a little bit about their needs, but there's so many of them, it's hard to get in depth with everyone about their needs. So I said, well, what if we did a project where I interviewed some, several dozen, maybe 30, maybe 35, maybe 50 of the people you're serving to find out more about them, both so we can tell their stories. They've been through this horror and they're experiencing horror and they want to talk, and also so that the JCC can serve them better. So I've been coming every day to either to the JCC or to where you house them. Sometimes I go to their apartments or their hotels, and I interview usually 2 or 3 a day. And at first they're not sure they want to talk. And some of them are sort of, I'm in a hurry, I don't have time to talk. I can't talk about the war yet. I can't face the war. But then you ask a few questions and usually it comes pouring out. They want to tell you the story and they want to be heard and they want to process the story. And, if you think about it, what you feel when you're in that situation is alone, right? Like you're struggling, you're alone. The world is horrible. How do I cope? They seem to like telling someone who isn't in that situation what they went through and being heard sympathetically. And I don't pretend it's therapy. I'm not doing therapy. I wouldn't even try to do therapy. I just listen, really. And then at the end, I ask them about what do they need from the JCC and what do they need from other service providers as a way to give you some just data on what maybe, are you doing everything they need or might they be doing something different? And we're coming to the end of that project. I don't have any conclusions yet, but the stories are very powerful and, some days overwhelming. I mean, some days it's like I sit there and I listen and I can hardly even listen to the stories, let alone how could these people be living through them? Can you share a couple that have been surprising for you or memorable for you? Well, I can talk about the one this morning because it was so vivid, right? Sure. So this is a 50-year-old woman who worked as she was kind of a building administrator, like managed a kind of apartment complex in Kharkiv. And her daughter was almost a month away from giving birth when the war broke out. And so first they raced around and they got the daughter in a maternity hospital next door in Kharkiv, and they thought maybe they could stay. And the daughter was in the base, coming up and down all day long in the hospital to the basement, awful things. Finally, the daughter got out in an evacuation. And then and then the mother followed, and the mother got out also in a fairly difficult evacuation. And, the stories of the evacuation, everyone's on the bus for 12 hours, everyone's on the bus for 72 hours, everyone's in the train, the crowded, scary train. So the awful thing in this case was that the grandmother of really this woman's mother-in-law lived in a village about an hour from Kharkiv, and she was killed in a bombing. So the daughter called with the baby in her arms. Here's the 2-3-day-old baby, grandma. Here's you should know about the baby. Don't worry, we're going to come home soon. You're going to see the baby. We're all going to be together. Everything's going to be okay. And 2 days later, the neighbors call and they say she's dead. And so this woman had both a newborn baby in her life from Poland and this 82-year-old woman lying in front of the house. The Polish army uses satellite imagery and says, yes, there's a dead body in front of the house. And how would you even process this, right? And they're Jewish. They're not quite Jewish. It's patrilineal descent or something, but they sort of identify as Jews. They don't have any Jewish background. But now they have a little theory about, well, the family was originally from Poland, and Polish anti-Semitism drove them to go to Ukraine, in the beginning of the 20th century. And now we're coming back, and she died, and a new baby came into the world. Maybe that new baby was fated to live in Poland. I mean,
Wow.
you can't make it up. It's the stories, you can't make them up. And that's one very moving story today. But every day there's a movie. I mean, I hadn't heard about a death before. This was honestly the first death I heard about. And the woman looked over at me and she said she was just like you. She was such a little skinny thing. And she said, we're not sure if shrapnel hit her or if the power of the explosion somehow knocked her down. We don't even know really how she died. And we don't know where she is. We don't know where they buried her. There's mass graves and you don't know where it is. And it's in Kharkiv, it's on the road to Kharkiv. We're not going back anytime soon. And on the other hand, this is such a good story of a new baby in Poland. And you just, again, I came away from that conversation this was this very strong woman, in tears. And it's too powerful to take sometimes. So I don't have a good answer or a kind of,
wow.
Yeah.
Do most of them want to go back?
Well, to me, that's the most interesting and important question. And I would say there's some that are just still confused. They don't know. They're sort of in fantasy. People say things like the war will be over in a few weeks and we'll go back. And so there's a few of them, maybe, I don't know, 10% or something, maybe more, I don't know. And then there's a few that say, no, we really don't want to go back. There are going to be mines everywhere and it's going to be dangerous and it's going to take 10 years to rebuild the country. And, by the way, I'm a dentist and I want to work as a dentist and I already have a visa to go to England. And there's, I don't know, maybe 10% of them. And then there's most of the people in the middle. And again, I don't have the shares right, but who say, well, I want to go back, but when? And I don't know. And one man said to me, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know what's going to happen today. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't even know what's going to happen this evening. And they're all living in this. That's the hardest part. Remember, what I remember is at the beginning of the pandemic when we all didn't know, what's going to happen today, what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen this evening. And these people are all living in that suspended whatever. And again, some of them, especially ones that have a skill or a small child really, often seem to see, well, life might be better outside. It might be hard to go back. It's wrenching because you're giving up your country, but there are some that see that. And then there, a lot of strong patriotism.
I'm sure you asked every single one of them, what's your most pressing need right now?
And it's changed a little bit. So, again, I've been here a month. I think what they really need right now, I'm not bringing this back to me, but they want jobs. They want to work, they want to support themselves. And they all tell you this story about there's all these women, everyone's looking, there are too many people looking, they're all women. There are no more jobs, there's some jobs for men, but there are no jobs for women. And they don't have the language and they don't have any skills. And so they want jobs, but there's a long way from where they are now to getting jobs.
Yeah.
And, that's what for me, that's, if I was here running the JCC, that would be my next priority, is how to figure out what kind of jobs we need here, and how to come with some quick training, not 5 years of training, not 3 years of training, 6 weeks of training, and
So
teach you
I
some
guess
programming skills.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that for us, what's an interesting balance that we're working on, which again, remember, this is very new for us as well, and we talk to people that are giving us advice, is how much do we focus on the emergency? In other words, do I say do I have five, do I take, the price, do I take what we're spending for 5 hotel rooms tonight and train people, but then those people sleep at the train station, instead
Yeah.
of,
But I mean, but you should,
so we are working on it, but we have English classes and Polish classes to try to, start developing skills that are going to help make them more marketable.
Right.
Well,
2 pieces of advice from, American experience about that. The employers need people too, right? So especially like in the IT world. So you should come up with a way where you're not paying for the training, where they're paying. They need the workers. Really in the IT industry, it's the biggest need. For a little bit of training, you can have somebody who's useful. So work out a deal where you're paying half or you're paying a quarter and they're paying most of it. And here's the other tip. In America, they have something where you learn the language and the skill at the same time. Because it's really hard and takes a long time to learn a language, right? And people burn out and they give up. But if you're learning, well, you want to be a nurse, well, you have to know this is the blankety blank vein, and this is a syringe, and this is like how you talk to the patient. You're much more likely to learn the language quickly because you're learning the language and the skill at the same time. And so those are my 2 tips for job training here.
Thank you. We'll
not that you need my tips, but
we do. No, absolutely, I do. Tell me, what are they surprised by the reaction in Poland, by the Polish response that the help that
we're again, I'm starting to see a shift. They're all really grateful, but now I'm starting to see a little more burnout in the volunteers, right? There are fewer volunteers, there are fewer supplies. The other volunteers I know talk about sort of, these annoying pushy Ukrainians who feel entitled. I'm starting to hear more tensions, and I'm starting to hear the refugees again sort of say there are too many people, and some of the refugees complain about other refugees. Somebody yesterday was saying, I'm ashamed of my fellow refugees who are here like pushing each other in line and fighting over the tuna fish. And so it's in the beginning it was all good. But now we're starting to see the rubs. Even in these casual interviews in 4 weeks, I'm starting to see a little different feeling. And again,
all your interviews are with a translator, right?
Yes.
So that's another piece that's more complicated.
Yes, but she's good. I have a very good translator. But I think the tip for you guys is, if I was here, I don't want to, who am I to give you tips? I don't know anything about it. But
we don't know anything either.
I think the question now is, if we see these challenges coming, like the burnout and these women being here longer, and now they have different kind of needs, in some ways harder, like finding them food and housing was hard enough, but finding them jobs is going to be even harder. So it's really, there's no silver bullet, but it's about planning, knowing that's coming and planning. Easy to say, but.
Tamar, you also went into Lviv. Can you talk? You spent a few days in Lviv. Can you talk us through those few days?
Lviv was so powerful. The first thing about Lviv that really is shocking is in Poland, you had 40 years of European investment, both EU investment and foreign direct investment. And they haven't had it in Ukraine. And so they look sort of like the same. It's like you took the same city from 40 years ago, and in one you invested and the other you didn't invest.
Right. A larger, grander, more decrepit Krakow.
And exactly, but without so many modern things, right? It's just, you feel like it's a civilizational difference almost.
Yet I was there last time. I was there in May. I went to a supermarket with Kasha, and it was the grandest, most well-stocked, best supermarket that I'd ever seen anywhere.
Well,
and
all right.
In Poland, better than the United States or any European country.
Well, it's an organized country. They're good at that. But anyway, so the other thing you notice right away, and I was there before the recent bombing, so there hadn't been any bombing
Right.
really to speak of. But you still knew that you were in a city at war because there were the checkpoints and there was the curfew. And I'm in my 4-star hotel, and at 4 in the morning, I have to go to the basement, like the alarm sounds, and I have to go to the basement. So it becomes clear very early on, you're in a city, in a country at war. But then the really amazing thing was everybody there, every single person I met had taken their life, whatever they were doing, and they had turned it so they were doing something different now to support the war effort, the way the JCC has, but there it's everyone. So, the guy who used to run the National Art Gallery, that's now a warehouse for supplies. They put all the pictures in storage, and now it's a giant warehouse that ships supplies all over the country. The guy who ran the nonprofit, a little bit like my nonprofit, Research Policy Nonprofit, they put away the nonprofit, and he's the recruitment center for the territorial defense. The city tourist agency is now the media center. And it's true of these organizations, but it's also true of every person. I used to do this, I put it aside, now I do this. And that's their big advantage. I mean, it's like everyone in the country is helping with the war, and everyone in the country believes in the war. And people said to me over and over and over after the victory, oh my God, after the victory, the whole society believes after the victory. There's a big challenge here to get past the victory, but if everyone in the country believes it, you got a big advantage.
What about Zelensky? Did you hear people talking much about Zelensky?
It's interesting. It's a good question. Not personally. I mean, it's more the country, the war, right. Our cause.
We in the West are more fixated on Zelensky.
Absolutely.
We need the heroes than as opposed to seeing it as a group effort, right?
Yeah. To them, it really is the nation, and we're a strong nation, and we're a part of a strong nation. And those Putin? Russians are terrible. That too.
Yeah. That was my question. Like, do they talk about that, Putin or
Russians? Oh, yeah. Oh, no. I mean, they often don't even name that. The enemy is often like what they say. It's so big. It's like evil. It's the enemy. But yes, there's a lot. That's it's David and Goliath, right? It's like we're together and we're going to fight and we're going to beat that enemy. And I mean, that spirit. Again, I don't know what's going to happen. No one can predict what's going to happen. But if anything is going to help them win, it's going to be that, the whole population is in it. I mean, I don't know. I'm old enough to remember the Vietnam War. And, this is a funny analogy for Americans because we were on the other side, right? But, a tiny little nation with no resources, but a lot of cohesion and fighting spirit built a global power, beat a global power. And I see the makings of that here potentially because everybody's in it.
No, I think that there's a mistake, and I've talked about it before in the last couple of months, over the last couple of months, that if there's a mistake that we make when handicapping competition, and essentially a war is it's a violent form, people that are competing for something. Yeah. We heavily discount time and time again motivation.
Yep.
Well, Russia has a bigger army, they're going to win. Or Israel is surrounded by enemies and they all attack, they're going to wipe Israel off the map. Or this team versus that. And it's very much about motivation, not how things look on paper.
Yeah.
And Ukrainian, the motivation is completely different from what is going on the Russian side.
Yeah. I mean, again, it doesn't guarantee that they're going to win. And it doesn't. And sometimes the advantage of the power is greater than other times.
Can be more than the advantage from the other side from the motivation. But that being said, if you're trying to take territory from people that want to hold it more than you want to take it, it's very tough to take.
Yeah. And I think that's that's what's going to give us hope that something good might happen here. But I think the other thing that's just important to say before the end of the show is how much is at stake here? We're sort of in the middle of it. We're right here on the ground and we're seeing the refugees, and I'm in Lviv. But, somebody said to me yesterday, and I think they're right, this is going to be more consequential than 9/11 for the whole world. When you think how consequential 9/11 was.
Let me ask about that. As we see a world with Trump and Trumpism and Orban and stuff, where democracy and China, what is China is something, if you studied political science, you grew up, the model of freedom, everybody, all we care about is freedom. And China seems to be a little, as a people, not everybody, but this model of economic prosperity without freedom, which wasn't in the textbooks. It doesn't exist in our political thinking, yet that's the case. And we've seen democracy on retreating over the last 10 years, let's say, which is absolutely not the way it's supposed to have gone. Are we going back in the other direction? Is this a turn?
Well, let's hope so. Let's hope so. I mean, I think what's important to what do I know? I'm no scholar of Ukraine or Ukrainians, but I think what's important to them is it's partly nationalism, right? Which can be a double-edged sword force, right? Nationalism can be good, nationalism can be bad. They want freedom. They want freedom from the Soviet or the Russian bear. What democracy, is that a real thing yet? I don't know. And the West, is what the West is coming together around really democracy, or is it just poles of power? It's sort of hard to know, right? But that's all going to get, we're going to be talking, I mean, this is the beginning of the next 20 years, right? This is like not something that's going to end next week, like whoever wins in Donetsk, like the isolation of Russia and the sort of reconfiguration of the West and the East and this part of the world. We're just at the first minute of that. And that's going to be a big thing.
What surprised you, Tamar?
What surprises me?
What has surprised you? Yeah, what surprised you in the last month?
So much. I mean, first it was all the good things. First it was all the people volunteering. It was the amazing good spirit of the volunteers. It was the resilience of the Ukrainians. It was the fact that the Ukrainians are doing as well as they're doing in the war. But I'm worried about how it's going to play out as is this good first honeymoon moment? How long, I mean, honeymoon, wrong thing to say, people are dying and whatever, but this first moment where the world is really trying to help and we have the resources to help, I'm a little worried about how long will that go on and what will happen. I guess maybe just today, I'm sort of worried about it. What will happen, when we're in when we're at month 9 or month 12 or month whatever, what's it gonna all look like? And, right now, we're just at the beginning. So I don't know if that's surprise, but I guess I've already seen, I'm surprised that there's in just a couple of weeks, there's already a little bit of an arc from this, first, and maybe that's just my arc.
Yeah. And you've told me that you need to somehow stay connected to this, that this has affected, how has this changed you? How has this affected you?
I think it's changed me a lot. I mean, I think I never have done anything sort of, I'm not even sure I'm doing anything altruistic now. I mean, I'm really but that's very powerful thing. And seeing all these other people doing something so altruistic, that's very powerful. And seeing all these other people. Yeah, and again, it's, I don't know. I mean, who knows how it's changed me? It's going to take a while to figure it out how it's changed me.
Fair enough. I hope we have I'm very excited about these vignettes, about these stories. You've done these interviews with people, and as we have some good ideas about what to do with that. And I think just hearing that one story, which I haven't talked to you about that many of them here and there. We sent out a few. I think maybe 3 or 4 I'm familiar with, but not anymore. And I'm intrigued to hear more and to work on this. And I think that this is something that it behooves us to try to put your stories out there soon.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I literally would not be here except for you kind of encouraging some stranger on the phone, come and unpack boxes and maybe it'll work out. So I really owe you a big.
I believe what I said. People think I forget everything, but I only pretend that I have a little Columbo thing with the memory. I think what it was that, listen, if you want to come and just, unpack boxes, but I think we'll find something a little more related to who you are and what you've done.
Yeah, that's exactly what you said. That's exactly what you said. And it got me here. And I hope we found that. And I hope, even, never mind even my storytelling, I do feel that for these people, the chance to tell their story is a big thing. It's just really helpful to them. And they don't want to say, I want a shrink, they don't want to say, I want psychological help. They don't want to, a lot of you see here over and over and over again, someone else needs it more than I do. I don't want to ask for any more. But I think the chance to tell their story has been for many of them very powerful. And I'm glad I gave them that chance. It was a small thing to give, but.
The strength that people have, the strength that solidarity gives them is something that we ourselves as Americans haven't really seen the past. I think people in Poles that remember 1980, well, or these periods, or 1989, and different periods in history when different societies go through change or through moments of great trauma. And it can be war, it can be one of those facilitators or the impetus for that. But I think we're seeing something that if Ukraine wasn't united the way it was, and if the world wasn't standing behind Ukraine, can you imagine how much worse? I don't only mean on a material level, but these people feel, well, oh my God, how can we help you? And they understand, and Ukraine is united, and that how much strength that gives them, even not only those fighting, but those here on this side who are as important.
No, I think that's right. Well, I'll end with a silly analogy. There was a movie where Tom Hanks was shipwrecked on an island. And at first he could hardly figure out how to deal with anything. And then by mistake, he gets a soccer ball. He puts his bloody hand on a soccer ball. And it looks like a face. Volleyball. It looks like a face. Okay, you saw this movie too. And that volleyball becomes his companion that gives him strength to get through the horror. And, when he gets frustrated, the volleyball says, as if it says, calm down. And when he needs strength, the volleyball says, here's some strength, just by looking over at this face. And I think that's in some way what the function of the helping is. Like there's somebody in it with you. And that's really powerful for human beings. What's the movie? Do you remember?
The movie is Castaway. It was on the. I was in Warsaw, and there's a TV which I'm not usually watching, and it was actually on like 3 days ago. So the volleyball wasn't much help at the end when he got back, and his wife had married someone. Okay, and listen, Wilson couldn't do everything.
Right,
Wilson
got him through it. What are you talking about?
Tamar, are you on Team Latka or Team Hamantash?
Hamantash.
Ooh, most people like it. I like that. And Tamar, very important question. Your 3 favorite films of all time.
Oh no, that's too hard. I can't answer that. I don't know. There are too many. I've been watching. Okay, here's what I won't go all time. I've been watching. So I came to Poland. What do you watch in Poland to try to understand Poland? I've been watching a bunch of Andrzej Wajda films. So I've watched like 5 or 6 Andrzej Wajda films since I've been here. And I mean, that's not exactly, they're all pretty searing. It's not exactly like, oh, feel a good movie, but I'm very deep into those. Starting, the oldest is Canal, and then Ashes and Diamonds, maybe the best, and then there's Caton, not the Caton Massacre.
I didn't like the Promised Land, and once I will tell you that once I was doing, I had back problems, and I was doing physical therapy in this hospital every day, and the person who was doing it next to me every day was Vida, and so we got to talking. You're doing something the same time as everybody. You kind of get to know each other a little bit. And I we're talking about his films because, of course, and I had to tell him that I said, I have to say, as a Jew, not only the anti-Semitism aspect, but I was like, the Promised Land for me, I haven't watched the Promised Land. My favorite of your brilliant works, Mr.
Okay, well, I won't watch that now that you warned me. But
I will have to get emergency question. Somebody is asking, Michelle Bannon. Hi, Michelle, a friend of ours. Is the greatest need money or volunteers on the ground? Money. Money. We all understand, we are spending unbelievable amounts of money to feed these people and house them, and these Ukrainian are friends, and to house them. And we need to make sure that we need the resources to do that. So no question, we have plenty of volunteers. We have more volunteers, although we appreciate people that want to come. We have more volunteers than we can manage, but we need money. So tell your friends.
Well, let me say something a little controversial, right? I mean, I'm not saying don't give to the JCC, do give to the JCC, but the real, even more powerful need for the JCC for money is the military. Most donors want to give for humanitarian help, but like the symptoms, what the humanitarian needs, those are the symptoms. The cause is the war, and really what has to happen is they have to win, and so I mean, give both. And many 9-to-1 people want to give humanitarian help, but there are people who are not necessarily buying guns, but buying trucks or buying bulletproof vests or buying helmets. Like they need